All right, we're going to the cloud today. So I want to welcome everybody. We have Debbie Maddy coming to us from Texas. And we will get started with Debbie. We have a lot of people here this morning. So it's really good to see everybody coming back again. A lot of people who've been coming for several weeks now. I think we're starting to have this as a regular Sunday morning thing. I was gonna quit it in Memorial Day, but I've had several new people call me and say, can I do it? Can I do it? So I'm gonna continue on until we lose interest. So good morning, Debbie.
Good morning.
I'm gonna remove my spotlight and I'm gonna let you start by telling us all a little bit about your creative journey and how you got to where you were and when you started. I think you and I met at a workshop at Aeromont with Amy Patansu.
Yes. Yes.
And you were just starting to get into Shibori then.
Yes. Yes.
That was like the beginning of it. And
well, not totally, but you want me to go all the way back to when I started sewing?
Go back to whenever you feel comfortable.
Well, I've always worked with fibers of some sort. I started sewing as a very, very young child. I made doll clothes on a little sewing machine that you hook to a table with a clamp and you turn the handle and it would sew. It sewed a chain stitch, but it did sew. And I started sewing garments when I was 9. And my mother was a seamstress and she owned a drapery shop and upholstery shop. And one of the first little jobs that I had, I was about 6. And back then for draperies, you had little lead weights that she had to cover with muslin. And that was my job. I would fold that muslin around that lead weight and I would sew it on my little sewing machine. But when I started sewing garments, like I said, I was 9 that summer and I made everything I wore for years. High school, college. At one point in time, I made everything my family wore except underwear. I never made any underwear. But I did embroidery, I did cross stitch, I did all kinds of needlepoint and all kinds of thread work. And then I started quilting in 1982. I was teaching at a junior college in Amarillo, Texas. And I took a quilt class there. And that hooked me on another type of fiber. And I did that for years. And all this time, from whenever I was old enough to start experimenting with stuff, I did all kinds of dye. I did silk, a little silk painting. I took classes from everybody that I could. And there came a point where I was going to Houston to Quilt Festival every year, and there were loads of teachers there teaching different kinds of dye techniques and stuff. And I took a lot of those, but it never really hooked me. You know, I didn't come home and keep going. But I took a class in McKinney, Texas at a little quilt shop from Kari Ming. She does French General fabric for Moda, and she does a trip to France every year. And she got into indigo and wove there, but she did a little one-day class. And it was really not complicated at all. She just gave us a few little basics. She mixed the indigo vats and we played all day. But that's what really got me hooked. And then I started searching for more ways to feed that thirst for knowledge. And I did that 2-week class at Aeromont where I met Suzanne. And we worked with all kinds of dyes, but the indigo is what really interested me, and Amy showed us a little more complicated shibori techniques. And then I was on Pinterest one day, which I have to be very careful with Pinterest because it becomes a rabbit hole for me. I can sit down and 3 hours later, 4 hours later, I was still sitting there. but I found a piece of fabric that I could not figure out how it was done. And so I started clicking back and clicking back, finding the source. And that's where I found the source of the textile workshop in Japan with Brian Whitehead. And so I signed my husband and I up to go. And we went to Japan for 10 days and studied with Brian with indigo and the different shibori techniques. And I've taken classes from Catherine Ellis more than once on natural dyes and loved them, loved them. Did you say Ellen Noble was on?
Yeah, she's here.
Because I took class from Ellen at Shakerag, I believe, is where I took classes from her with the natural dyes, and we did indigo. And I'm just totally, totally enthralled with all of it. I love the stitching part of the shibori, especially with the indigo. I guess because I've got the background of all the stitching anyway and the handwork with the stitching, but I've studied at the John C. Campbell with Gasali, Adiyamo, and love that. Found the African indigo to be a lot different with the outcomes and than the other indigos that I've worked with. But I've just tried to learn more and more and more. And I have books and I went to England and did 10 days in England with Jane Callender. And it's so interesting to see all the different ways that people resist the indigo and the different ways that people work with the different kinds of vats. And sometimes it's amazing where I will go and take a class with one person and they dip the indigo for a minute. And then I go and take another class and they dip the indigo for 5 minutes. And then another class and they dip it for 10 minutes. So I think it's one of those things you have to figure out why they're doing what they're doing and what kind of vat they're using and that sort of thing. But after I had been studying and studying more and more, then as a quilter, I also was a quilt teacher. I'm a quilt pattern designer. And I decided that it might be interesting to have my fabrics reproduced. And so I did a proposal for Moda Fabrics, which is based in Dallas, but I had a good rapport with them because of my quilt patterns. They had been purchasing and distributing my quilt patterns since 2002. So I knew a lot of the people there, but I didn't know the people that were in the design department. And so I talked with a friend and asked her if she thought they'd be interested. And she said that she really thought they would. And she told me I just really needed to back up my proposal. And so I did my proposal, sent pictures of my fabrics, and showed how it seemed like at that point shibori was everywhere in home decorating and clothing and everything. And so they said yes, that they would love to do that. And so that started my journey with the fabric design for my commercial fabric. And I do all of the hand stitching, clamping, everything that needs to be done. I hand dye the fabric. And then I take my original fabric to Moda and they send my fabric to Japan to the mill where it's reproduced. And I've been extremely happy with it. This is my hand-dyed fabric. This is
nice.
The reproduction. So I think they do a fabulous job of reproducing my fabric. I've had some people that felt like I shouldn't be doing that because it wasn't the sacred old way to do it. But I figured there's people like me that love the adventure of doing the dyeing. There's people that can afford to buy the hand-dyed fabrics. They don't want to do it themselves, but they want to purchase it. And there's people that just want to make things with that style of fabric. And so for a while, I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. But then I decided, nope, I should. And I have loved every minute of it. And I'm still in search of more knowledge to learn everything I can. As several of the people on here know, I went back to Japan. I guess it's been 2 years almost now. Has it been 2? Suzanne and I went, and there was 18 of us went on that trip. And every time that I take any class with anybody, or if I get new books and read, there's always a little more to learn, a little more to learn. And when you think about something that's been going on for so many years, and there's so much out there, so many techniques, then it just keeps me going. The quilt behind me that's hanging behind me has at least one piece of all of my first 6 lines of fabric with Moda. But every one of those pieces, I've got the original fabric that I dyed. So, but I've met wonderful people along the way. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
So what other kind of jobs have you had in your lifetime?
Well, my very first job, like I say, was doing that little thing for my mother, but I was a dental hygienist. I cleaned teeth for 35 years, or taught people to clean teeth. So
I think this is probably a lot more creative.
well, it's a lot more fun. That's a lot more. I said the only thing I miss, because I quit for 5 years, I did my quilting business and I cleaned teeth at the same time. And I decided I had to give up one or the other. But I said the only thing I miss about cleaning teeth is getting the gossip, because that's how I got the gossip around town, and talking to people that couldn't talk back to me.
So they say crisis is a strong driver of creativity. How has COVID affected your creativity?
Well, it gave me time to think. I was extremely busy the year before COVID. I was traveling tons to teach around the country and to lecture. And it's like I enjoyed driving, because most of the time that's how I got to the jobs. I mean, I drove from the East Coast to the West Coast, but I could think in the car, and I enjoy it. But being at home, it has given me more time to think, and what do I want to do, and how can I do this? It's given me time to take classes online. I'm right now at the very end of a wonderful natural dye class with Maywa from in Canada, and it's a wonderful class. Tomorrow we start indigo, so it's going to be fun with that.
What kind of vat do you use normally when you're doing your indigo at home? Yours, you can look behind me and you can see my stuff looks like bright blue. Your stuff looks really dark. We're like 2 different colors on the spectrum.
Well, I've used henna vat and iron vat, and I've done iron vat more than once, and Catherine knows my very last iron vat. I don't know what got in my head, but I decided to try a new somebody else's technique that was way old, and disaster. It was too much iron, and everything came out gray. And then sometimes, well, especially when I've been teaching classes, 1-day class, I use pre-reduced indigo, just because I could get the class going faster. But I have decided that in the future, I'll probably still do the pre-reduced just so some of the people, sometimes that's the thing that keeps people from getting into the journey is the fear of making that vat. So if I can show them how to do an easy pre-reduced vat and then show them how to do a fruit vat at the, you know, at the same time, because the fruit vat is not quite as fast, but you know, you could do it, and I could even take a small vat with me for that. But I very, very, very seldom dip 2 or 3 times. I dip 10 times. I like the dark, dark blue indigo. So I have a hard time doing just a few dips for the pale blue.
Yeah, so I've gotten, since we came back from Japan, I do more dips than I used to.
Yeah.
You know, and I do close to 10. How long do you do your dips for?
I usually do 2 to 5 minutes. Sometimes I'll do 2 minutes and sometimes I'll do 5. And occasionally I will put something in the vat to keep it or hang it. And I will leave stuff overnight. And I learned that from Catherine Ellis.
Yeah. So how big is your vat at home?
I've always used 5 gallon. Now I just ordered a and received I think it's a 15 gallon that I'm going to mix just when the weather gets a little bit warm. We're still having some cold nights and we've had some really cold days. So, but I'm going to do a bigger vat. So
15 makes a big difference. I went from, well, I use 5 in my classes, but I have now got two 15-gallon buckets with nice screw-on lids, and they make a big difference.
yeah.
It lasts a lot longer, and you know, I get a lot more out of it. So do you think, do you always see a finished product before you start, or do you still get those surprises?
Oh, I get lots of surprises. Sometimes they're good surprises and sometimes they're not so good surprises. But the thing with indigo, even if it's a surprise and it's not what you had in your mind, it's still beautiful. So I think. And then if it's not what I envisioned, then I go back and I try again.
Well, the nice thing about being a quilter is you can piece. So you can cut those good parts out, cut those bad parts out, and the piecing is good. So where do you find all your inspiration?
Oh, that's a hard thing to answer. I think it's everywhere. If you just look, there's inspiration everywhere. You can look at a piece of fabric that's not Shibori, not indigo, but you can see how you could use that design to kind of change it over to what you want it to be with the indigo. Japan, and was both times that I've been to Japan, I have been amazed at the inspiration there just from everything, the buildings, the manhole covers. I mean, it's like everything. I think just going for a walk and you see a chain link fence and you're like, well, if I stitch those sort of lines, what would it look like? So, you know, you just have to be open. And I think that's part of this COVID being in. We've had time to observe more and to see what's out there and really see things.
When you make your samples to send to Moda, how big of a piece do you usually make to send to them?
I do a 22-inch piece because when they do the reproduction, it's screen printed and the screen is 22 inches. In the beginning, I was doing 1 yard pieces, and figured out real fast that I didn't need to be doing that big, because when you're doing this on a 1 yard piece, that's a lot of stitching. So I do a 22 inch.
So which pattern of all the patterns you've done, which one do you think is your favorite?
The one that took me to Japan, which I don't know if I can find it. It was the katana with the arch.
Mm.
And I know it's in there, but I can't see it. And then I'm pretty partial to this new one. So this is going to be in my new line that's coming out. And I really like the way it came out.
Yeah, that one's really nice. A lot of stitching.
A lot, yeah.
A lot of stitching. I think that's the thing most people don't understand. You know, I bought those samples from you and I put them in my office on my back wall. So when I get students who come to the studio and they say, oh, this is a lot of work, I go, well, come here, I'll show you what you can get. I take them in and I go, you can order this and it's already done for you. A lot of people, you know, they don't understand how much work there is involved in the stitching. And so you're a Shibori teacher also. What would you say is the biggest reason that people don't get good results with their Shibori?
Well, I think if it's the stitching part, they're not pulling their stitches tight enough. I really think until someone sees or feels how tight you have to pull the stitching, then they never pull it tight enough. Or they don't, if they're doing fold and clamp, they don't clamp tight enough. They think you just have to do a little bit of pressure or a little bit of pulling the stitches up and that's going to work. And so I think that's the main reason. And then the second thing is, I think people in their mind want the deep, dark blues, but they want it right this minute, and they don't have the patience to do the multiple dips. And they see how dark it is when they pull it out of the vat, and they think, oh, I'm done. I don't have to do anymore. So I think that's the two things that keep people from getting the results that they want.
So Sarah asked, how many yards do you have printed?
Oh, I don't have the stuff printed. I'm in a relationship with Moda. They do the reproduction, they do all the printing, and they do all the selling. We sold, let's see, 70,000 yards of the new one that's coming out. I think is what it was. So, but I don't do that. I just, you know, they pay me for the design. I don't have this stuff printed.
Is it kind of like licensing, like people who do license art?
Yeah.
But I mean, your work, it's just beautiful. Every time I see more patterns, I'm just thoroughly amazed.
Well, I'm working on a new line that will it won't ship until next January, but instead of being based on my stitching, it's going to be more of a curated line that's based on the vintage fabrics that I got this last time in Japan. So it'll be a little different.
Do you have any of the pieces of the line with the gold in them?
Yes. You see that?
Pretty.
That's my quilt. That's a free pattern that has all three colorways. There's the gold, the gray, and the blue.
So what is the gold supposed to just be gold, or is it supposed to be a color what color did you use to get or what type of dye?
I didn't do the colorway, the mill did. We curated it, but it's just when you're designing fabric, you have to think about the end consumer and what they're going to do with it and what it is new. And at the some of the different shows around the country, they were showing a lot of items that were done with grays and golds. And so we just did the exact same print, but instead of printing it with the blues, they printed with the golds and the grays. Does that make sense, what you're asking?
It's the gray's pretty.
It's funny because the people that have seen it, some of them love the gray and some of them love the gold and some of them just want the blue, you know, so. But it's been fun playing with the different colors in the patterns and the things I've had to design to go with the fabric, so.
But what do you do to stay motivated?
Oh, I don't know, because every now and then I'm like, but then if it's something that you really love to do, you're going to get motivated. You know, there's some days it's like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here. But I don't know. It just comes because I love it. I love what I'm doing.
So Jill said, for those who want to do their own stitching, do you have a book that has any stitching instructions, or you recommend a book?
I do not have any, but there's lots of books out there. And if you do not have a book at all, I would say, what's the name? The Yashiko Wada and that book, they call it the Shibori Bible. Drop me an email and I can send you a list of books. My absolute favorite book is two books that I got in Japan, but and they don't have any. One has a little English and the other one doesn't. But there's several books that are all in English that are written that way. Jane Callender's book is wonderful too. It's different kinds of stitching, but I travel and teach, but I don't have any books.
I got a great app for the books that are in Japanese. I got a great app on my phone, and you can actually hold it on it and it will translate it into perfect English that you can understand.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not quite what it says.
Yeah, occasionally the translation is different.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So what's one of your typical days like?
Well, I don't usually get up this early. I know that y'all think that's crazy, but I don't usually get up until 8:30 or 9 o'clock, but I don't go to bed until 11:30 or 12. But I usually get on the computer and I see what email I have. I see what orders have come in. I don't process the shipping and stuff that we do. My husband does that, so I don't have to do that. And then some days I will work on stitching for Shibori. Right now I'm doing that natural dye class with Charlotte and Sophina. And I'm way behind because of all the snow mess that we had in my busted pipes and stuff. But it's different every day, and some days I have to just sit down and do work. I have to write instructions for quilt patterns. my days are not usually the same. There's different things every day.
You haven't been traveling this year for doing workshops. When do you think you'll be back on the road?
The first thing that I have that's scheduled in person is in August of this year, I think. So I still will have Zoom stuff because some of the guilds and the shops and stuff they're not ready for people to come. But I've got that second vaccine, and I can still do my mask and gloves and stuff, but I feel comfortable going places now. The last place I went was Asheville, North Carolina, where Catherine was doing a seminar with Roland Ricketts and Sarah, can't remember her last name now. And that was it. I mean, I got home and haven't been anywhere since, and I have not been comfortable being around other people at all. So, but now I am. Once I get through my 14 days after this injection, I feel more comfortable doing that.
So Catherine wants to know how the shipping department is doing.
He's doing great. He's doing great. My husband has some major health problems, and he was in some bad health problems for a while, but he's doing great. And so we are very, very thankful.
He's doing a lot of weaving now.
Well, he is. He got a new loom, and he's having trouble getting it, what do you call it, warped. But I think if we could just find a class that somebody could help him with that particular kind of loom, it would help. But yes, he's a weaver, and he's the shipping department, and he does a good job. So, but no, he's doing great.
Let me feed the kid. I'm coming up.
Somebody's got their voice on. Yeah, I think for all of us who are creatives, having that person that's there behind us for support is very helpful. We all need that person that can get our backs, and support us.
David was a CPA, and so he's always done all of my business end of stuff, which has been a blessing for sure. Because
I know you used to do some jewelry too. Do you have any other creative channels besides, or do you not have any time?
It's the time. I've done quite a bit of jewelry, and that's what right now I'm itching to get back into some jewelry making. I made these earrings, so and I've been sewing some garments during this COVID time. I had time to get patterns to fit me. But I've got a coat cut out of a quilt, which, I'm excited to get that finished. But there's, I wanted to get back to some knitting, but like I say, it's time. If we could just figure out how to get more hours in the day, that would be good.
So somebody just asked if you would go to their Silk Painters Guild in Oklahoma.
Yes, I will go anywhere people pay me to come.
Yeah, how have you liked taking your online classes?
I've loved it. The online classes have been great for me because I think I kind of have ADD, and when I'm in a class with lots of people, I don't process everything until
Oops.
okay. And so, like when I took Catherine's class, I loved, I was 2 weeks with Catherine. We did proteins and we did the cottons and stuff, but I didn't process all of that until I really got home, where I can sit and think about it and write it down. And So the online, I can go back and I can watch the videos. Now, I'm saying online, the classes I've been taking are not Zoom classes. They are pre-recorded classes where you can watch the videos, read the PDFs, and then work at your own pace. And that, I love that, because that way I can work at my own pace.
So, do you think that people can learn creativity? Or does it, you think
I
it's
think-
something?
I don't think you learn creativity. I think you learn how to open your mind to your own creativity. I think everybody's got creativity in them. It's just different with different people, and just like different interests with different people. But if you know, some people are just born with a natural eye for color, but other people, if they're taught some of the color basics, then that opens their mind to color creativity. Somebody is eating breakfast, or
I think I just muted everybody. Let me unmute you. And where's Debbie? All right, let me unmute Debbie too.
okay, I unmuted myself.
Okay, so I muted everybody and unmuted you and I. Yeah, somebody was banging some dishes around. So do you have anything that you haven't done yet that you feel compelled to do in the future? What do you have do you have a fiber bucket list?
Well, I still want to go back to Japan again, just to learn more there. I should have thought about that before we started here. I love to travel. And so I want everything to open up again so that I can travel and see the fibers of different countries and different things like that.
Yeah, Debbie's an excellent teacher. I mean, for anybody who hasn't, who has a guild or would like her to come, she does it. She is really a good teacher.
Thank you.
And I highly recommend her to come. And she was a good travel companion too. We had a great time when we went to Japan. And I too share the love. I think once you go there, you get kind of hooked. And there's so much to see, and there's so many kinds of art and fiber and different dyes and even the katazome, working with the katazome and the rice pastes and things. I don't know that you can ever get done with this art. It just compels you to keep diving in. And just like you, I get sucked into Pinterest too, because I find all these beautiful, and the Instagram artists from Japan, and I look at their shibori, and then you want to read the design and try to figure out how they did it.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things, there are a lot of things that were canceled this last year that I would like, once we get to where we can travel, that I want them back on my list. And one thing, David and I were going to do a 3-week cruise for our 50th anniversary. And we were going to England and Scotland and Wales and the Scandinavian countries and Russia. And I was really excited to see the different fabrics and fibers in those countries. because I've been to England, but I just went to England to take the class from Jane. And so I saw the area around where she lived, but other than that, I didn't see anything there. So I think once I can travel again and see new fabrics and stuff from different countries, that I will really enjoy that also. And there's places I would love to teach that I haven't taught. I would like to teach like at Madeline Island, different smaller venues and things like that. I was supposed to teach last year at the John C. Campbell, which I have taught there several times. The only time I've been a student was when I took Gasoli's class, and it felt good to be a student instead of a teacher at the John Campbell. But we just booked, they're booking classes for 2022. And so I'll teach 2 weeks at the John Campbell in 2022. 1 week of quilting and 1 week of the Shibori and Indigo. So, I'm excited. I'm looking forward to those things again.
What do you think, as far as when people go to take a workshop, what do you think are some of the biggest things they take away with them when they leave?
Well, I think when you take a workshop, no matter who you are or how much knowledge you have, I think you can always learn something new. And if it's a one-day workshop and you learn one thing, then I think it was worth it. Because if I can learn one thing and spend a day with all these people that have the same interests that I do, then it's been a wonderful day. And if you have the chance to take multiple day workshops, then you really get to know the other people. You get to see what their inspiration is, how they bring that inspiration out in themselves and in other people. I just think that workshops, it's not just learning a technique. It's being around other artistic people. I think that when you're around people that love to dye fabric like you do, they like to quilt, or they like to sew, or they like to knit, then you've got an instant camaraderie that you don't have with some other people. So I think workshops, but I love to learn. I love to teach, but I also love to learn. And so I take workshops just like, everybody else, to learn, to meet people, and to soak in their inspiration, or, what emerges from their mind and body.
So Kathy asked, how did you learn the more complicated stitch techniques?
That has been mainly from books. And then I'll see a technique, and then I think, well, now what else can I do with that? Because like this piece, I mean, it's a very simple running stitch, but I thought, if I just sit and do all of these little shell shapes, and the inspiration for this was a quilt stencil design for the actual quilting part that is called the Baptist fan. So, but I thought, if I do that and just do multiple rows, I'll see how it comes out. And I loved how it came out. But the Japanese books that I have, those have probably been the best for getting into some of the deeper stitching. And most of the more complicated stitching I've learned from books. Now, when I took Jane's class, her technique of stitching, I learned more from her than I did from her book. But now I have the book to refer back to. So.
Does anybody else have any questions for Debbie?
We have to unmute there.
Oh, Sandy?
Yeah. I have been searching for containers large enough. Where do you get your containers for your vat?
With a 5-gallon, I just use, if I'm going to do 5-gallon ones, I use the paint buckets from Lowe's that have lids.
Okay.
Catherine, Catherine, is it a 15-gallon? Because I ordered that one that was on your blog.
Yeah, 14 or 15 gallon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's plastic. It's used as like a commercial drum, and it's very tall and narrow, which makes it a really, really good choice for an indigo vat.
If you go to Catherine's blog, which it is Ellis Textile, tell
Yeah,
them
you can access it through the website, ellistextiles.com.
Okay.
she has a link for that vat or that bucket thing, and it's tall and narrow, so you've got the depth there to do larger pieces of fabric or garments, and it's got a great tight fitting lid. So now people use trash cans. The thing is that if you want a large vat, you don't want it to be large width-wise, you want more
Right.
height,
Okay.
because you don't want a big surface. You just want to be able to dip deeper.
Okay.
But-
Well, my other question then, one of the classes I took, she had the electric pot and everything was kept on that, in that. So she had this thing running at home for, years. But you're not using the heated pot, and she was not using the what'd you call it? The
Pre-reduced. Yeah.
yeah, she was using the other
Yeah.
synthetic.
Yeah, I have a bucket heater that I can put in the vat to warm it up. And I live in Texas, so most of the time my vats are outside and it's 100 degrees. So that's not a problem. But do you know what a bucket heater is? You can get them at like animal supply stores and stuff. They use them to heat the water in a bucket for the livestock.
Oh, okay.
It's like if you've ever seen the little thing you put in a coffee cup to heat water real fast. It's
Right.
like that, only it's big.
Okay.
And you can heat your water. You can also wrap it with electric blankets.
Okay.
You can have a plastic and wrap it with electric blankets. There's all kinds of different things to keep a vat warm without keeping it on the fire all the time.
Okay. Great, because that was becoming an issue, trying to find something to keep that I could keep it warm and still. I'm up in the mountains. In the summertime, it would be great. I could put it outside, but in the wintertime.
Yeah. Of course, Suzanne doesn't have to keep things warm in Florida. It stays pretty warm. So.
Right.
It stays warm.
Yeah, but there's
But-
different techniques to keep your vats warm.
Great. Well, thank you.
Uh-huh.
So Thea has asked, do you work with pleated shibori?
I have, yes, a lot. And I've worked with different kinds of pleated shibori. And that was the first thing that I learned in Japan, was how to pleat up fabric so it was even. I've also worked with the little pleaters that for heirloom stitching and stuff, where you run it through the
Oh,
pleater.
The
For
smocker?
smocking, yeah, smocking pleater to do really tiny little pleats, and those things come out gorgeous. But yes, no, I have several stencils that I use to put dots on fabric so I can stitch and pleat up the fabric so it's even, and then I can do the stitching on top of that. And that's a wonderful thing. It's a lot of fun. But I was having to put the dots, and so I decided I would design stencils so it make it easier to do those.
Okay,
pleated. Yeah.
So you made the stencils yourself?
I have them made and they are on my website. I have
Oh, okay.
three different ones. So,
Okay,
And they're
wonderful.
beautiful. I
Right.
just got mine.
oh, good.
And I just wrote that if you come to Copenhagen, Denmark, then let me know. I will show you something.
Oh, that would be
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That'd be wonderful. Well, when Holland America, when they canceled everything, they canceled until 2022. So
Yeah.
we'll see what opens up. So we've
Yeah.
already had our anniversary, but that's all right. We can do
Yeah.
it for 52 years. You know.
52
Thank you.
years.
Hey,
Does
Debby,
anybody else have any questions?
I
Very-
do. Would you ever think about doing an online class with some of your advanced stitching techniques?
Sure. Yes.
I love the idea, like you, of like having stuff recorded so you can.
Yes. Yeah. And it's like, it's another one of those things that it's time. Right now, I'm in the process of doing a Zoom class that for just a small group of ladies with my new pattern that goes with the new fabric line. But I'm finding that I want to have more sections of that pre-recorded so that I can, they can go back and look again. But yes, Mary, and I think I'll be doing that pretty soon.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Watch your Facebook page for the announcement.
Yeah, well, that yes, but if you go on my website and sign up for my newsletter, I do not send out tons of stuff. But if I've got a new class or I'm registered to teach somewhere new, then I will send out a newsletter.
Excellent.
My Instagram and Facebook, I do a lot. I post stuff there a lot, but my newsletter will be a really good source for that sort of thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thea says, can you tell us some more about Katano Shibori?
Well, now my mind's gone blank. Is that the rice? No, Katano. No, Katano is the pleated. Okay, sometimes my mind gets fuddled, but that's where you do the pleating of the fabric, and then you get it all pleated up, and then you stitch different designs on the pleated fabric. Then you dye it, and then when you open it, those designs multiply out. Can you?
Yeah.
This is the fabric that took me to Japan, and that is how this is done. Is it the fabric's pleated up, then you mark your designs, you stitch through those designs, then dye it, and where you've stitched. But the pleating is what makes everything mirror image and multiply out.
Yeah. I find it difficult to get the blue inside. So
yeah, you want your stitching to be tight.
Yeah.
When you're doing and you want it to be definitely a stab stitch. You don't want to go sideways. You want it to be stab stitch. And then when you have it in the vat, you want to open those little pleats that you've created there.
Yeah.
And sometimes I will just take it and just move it back and forth like this. And that allows that indigo to get down in there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome.
Are you using a buffer on the outside, a full buffer strip on the outside?
Yeah. If you, and sometimes you can just stitch through a little fold and then stitch you a little fold on the other. But the best way to do, especially when you're doing really complicated stitching like that, is you have 3 pieces, and your outside pieces are a little narrower than the inside. But when you stitch through all those are your buffer that Suzanne was talking about. And so your stitch marks don't show in the center part. They just, you have the dots on the outside part. And it's just keeping those knots buffered like that.
That's a wonderful
So what kind of needles are you using for katana?
Pretty much like a sashiko needle. It's got to be heavy enough that you can push through all of those layers, but thin enough that you're not creating nail holes type of thing. So, and I really think that needle, sometimes you just need to buy several different kinds of, kinds of needles and then play with them. I'm doing some English paper piecing now, and tons of people love long milliner's needles. Well, I've found that the easiest thing for me is a short sharp. It depends on how your thimble, if you're wearing a thimble, what kind of thimble, where you're wearing it, how long your needle needs to be to go with that type of thimble. So that, I think needles get to be a personal preference. And when I go and teach classes, I take several different needles for people to play with. But you've got to have a strong needle because you're going through multiple layers of fabric.
I find too, my needle size will determine my stitch length a lot of times too.
The stitch length on the katana, it's not so much stitch length for those because I'm doing stab stitch in and out. And so the size of the needle doesn't, now, like if you're doing the running stitch, then the size of the needle, I think for me, I'm just, it would influence the stitch length there. But the other, you're just, you are definitely, or I am just straight in and then straight back up.
So you're going straight down and then almost straight back up in the same hole, but right next to it. No.
No. To do this stitching, is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
No. I go straight down and then I move over a little bit and come straight up. But
okay.
If as far as for me, the size of the needle influencing the stitch length would be when I'm doing a running stitch like
right.
this.
Okay.
And the large needle would make it, I would have to go further away. But when I'm doing a stab stitch, I can stab here and I could go over however far I want that stitch to be and come up. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, it makes sense. I was just trying to, I'm actually working, just laid a katana, a big katana piece out. I've not done one that's 6 foot long yet. So we'll see how it comes out.
I won't be doing a 6 foot long one probably ever. So
it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So does anybody else have any questions for Debbie while we're?
I do. What is your choice of fabric?
Oh, it depends on what I'm doing. Now, if I'm doing the katana where I'm pleating the fabric, I really like the Japanese kimono fabric. And it's like 14 inches wide. So it's wide enough to get the good design. But, I'm not using, I don't use really tight weave to do that because you can't get your needle through all those layers. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Well, we used to have Kasari Dye Works out here, but they've closed. So I don't have access to the 14-inch up in
on
this
my
area.
website. If you go on my website is debbymadi.com, and I have the Japanese fabric on there. And I also have a lot of other prepared for dyeing fabrics that you can use for the indigo. I have double gauze, I have triple gauze, it's beautiful to do the fold and clamp. I have a lot of different fabrics there, but I do have the Japanese fabric.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about, you were talking about heating the vat. I'm very new to this And I understand the oxygen with a vertical vat versus a flat open tray. Does the heat help it intensify or last longer, or?
Some vats, you need the warmth for the reduction to happen. Do you know what the reduction is?
When you take it out and then it oxidates?
No. It's for the.
Oh, when you're preparing the vat.
Yeah, when you're making your vat and when you're keeping the vat active, then in the vat there, and not going to go into the big long thing, but the reaction of the reducing agent to make the indigo where it will attach to the fiber. And some vats that they need that warmth in order for that reduction to happen.
Thank you. I see that. And how long do your full vats last? You just keep going and going and going?
Well, depending on what kind of vat you have, some you can keep them going and going and going and going. But like a pre-reduced vat for me, when it starts running out, then I start over. An iron vat, you can keep going for a long time. The henna vats and fruit vats, you can keep feeding them and keep them going for a long time. So you just have to work with the reduction, the pH, everything, keeping that vat going. But that, I think, is practice. You just have to work with it and not give up, because sometimes you have to add a little heat, sometimes you have to add other things to it, and that keeps it going.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It takes a while to get to. I don't keep my pre-reduced vats very long either. If I have to add Thiox to it one time, then I'm done after that, because it just starts to be too much chemical, and I can actually see it on my fabric if I put it in more than one. Well, I want to thank Debbie for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
We're gonna all be anxious to see your new line when it comes out.
Good.
And if nobody else has any questions, I'm gonna let everyone go so we can get to our Sunday. And we'll see how it goes. Check Debbie's website out. She's got lots of good stuff on it. I think everybody, quilters and Shibori artists alike, will find all kinds of things that they can use.
I would also like for you, if you belong to a group that has guest speakers, guest teachers, then give them my information, and I would love to come and teach by where you live. So.
Thank you. This was great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. It was so great to see the people I already knew and to see new people, and I loved it. So, bye.
Great.
Bye,
Thank
Tina.
you.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye, Debbie. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye.